Hey folks, hope everybody's having a good day. If you got a Bible with you, I encourage you to turn to James chapter 3, and appreciate you tuning in to watch our Wednesday night video tonight. And we're going to be talking a little bit about taming the tongue. That's what we see in James chapter 3. So if you'd like to follow along, I'm going to begin reading in verse 2 of James 3. It says, "For we all stumble in many ways. But if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, able to bridle the whole body as well. Now if we put bits into horses' mouths so that they may obey us, we direct our entire body as well. Behold, the ships also, that though they are so great, are driven by strong winds, they're still directed by a very small rudder." And then verse 5 says, "So also the tongue is a small part of the body, and yet it boasts of great things. Behold, how great a forest is set aflame by such a small fire. And the tongue is a fire, the very world of iniquity or sin. The tongue is set among our members, is that which defiles the entire body, and sets on fire the course of our life, and is set on fire by hell." Now, James, you got some pretty strong words there about learning to control our tongue or tame our tongue. And, if you go back to James chapter 1, he starts off his whole book in 1 and 19. He said, everybody ought to be quick to hear and slow to speak and slow to get angry. And you think about that, that's one quick and two slows. We ought to be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. Amy Lichter says it's cheetah, turtle. It's one fast and two slows. And so that's how James starts his book. We should be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. But chapter 3, he's got a lot in here about controlling the tongue. In Proverbs it says, death and life are in the power of our tongue. And I fully believe that if Christians, if church people all across the nation, if they would follow this message, if they would really be obedient to this message in James about the tongue, I really believe that churches all across the country would be fuller. I believe we would have a lot more people following Christ and in our local churches if people would follow this message about the tongue. Because, sometimes people get hurt. The old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That is simply not true. People hurt one another with their words. And, I'm sitting here at the altar at church. I heard about a lady one time. She came up to her pastor and she said, "Pastor, I struggle with my tongue." She said, "I want to lay my tongue on the altar." And the pastor looked at her and said, "I'm sorry, our altar's not that big." And we need to be careful with our words. If you look down at verse 2 and 3, he said, "If anyone does not stumble in what he says, he's a perfect man, able to bridle the whole body as well." He said, if we put bits in the horses' mouths so that they may obey us, we can direct their entire body as well. He gives the picture here of a great big old horse, but you can turn that horse wherever you want him to go with just a small bridle in his mouth. Verse 4, he gives the ship illustration. He talks about these huge ships we see like out on the ocean. And he says these massive, huge ships, they can still be guided and directed by that very small rudder in the back, wherever the captain wants it to go. And he's making that comparison to us and to our tongue that is small. Matter of fact, verse 5, he says, "So also the tongue is a small part of the body, and yet it boasts of great things. Behold, how great a forest is set aflame by such a small fire." He's talking about the tongue is small compared to our whole bodies. I'll sit here, I weigh a little over 200 pounds. Now, I've never weighed my tongue, but I did look it up, and they say our tongues on average weigh about 2.5 ounces, 2.5 ounces compared to my over 200-pound body. That's very small. But James is saying that little small part of our bodies can cause a lot of trouble. Death and life, Proverbs says, is in the power of our tongue. With our tongue, we can speak life or death to our children, to our spouse, to our co-workers, to other church members, to family members, to anybody. We can either speak death or we can speak life to them. The scripture says that's all in the power of our tongue. And it says that, behold how great a forest is set aflame by such a small fire. And, I'll leave you with a couple of illustrations there. On October the 8th, 1871, history records that Mrs. O'Leary's cow kicked over a lantern at 8:30 p.m. And that's what started what we now know as the Great Chicago Fire. The Chicago Fire left 100,000 people homeless, 17,500 buildings destroyed, 300 people dead, and $40 million worth of damage done, all because a cow kicked over a lantern. And, a great fire can be started by just something small, just something little. And that's what James is comparing to our tongue. I can remember back in 1986, my dad was in the hospital and we were watching the TV, and that's when the Space Shuttle Challenger blew up. And they finally determined weeks later that the Space Shuttle Challenger blew up because some small little rubber O-rings weren't placed correctly, or there was something wrong with them, just these little O-rings, and it caused the whole Challenger to blow up, and many people's lives were lost and destroyed. So that's kind of the comparison that James is making with our tongue. And if the Lord's willing, we'll look at this over the next 2 or 3 weeks. I challenge you to kind of be reading some more in James 3 and thinking about that. And may God help us all to tame our tongue. Hope you have a great day.